2 women dead, a stolen car covered in blood, and a killer who laughed during his own trial. This is the story of Wade Wilson, and he didn't just murder his victims, he hunted them. We're going to try and figure out what on earth drives a person to commit such brutal, senseless violence. So today, we're going to dive into the chilling case of Wade Wilson, who the media ended up calling the Deadpool Killer. We're going to trace the path of a man who really had every advantage in life but chose to become a monster, ending in a rampage that just terrorized an entire community.
You know, the heart of this story really unfolds over a terrifying 24-hour period. This wasn't some slow burn. No, it was a sudden explosion of violence that just got worse and worse with shocking speed.
I mean, the speed of his crimes is just staggering. On the night of October 6, 2019, he meets a 35-year-old woman named Christine Melton at a bar. By the next morning, she's dead, strangled in her own home. Then, he steals her car, goes to find his girlfriend Melissa Montana's, and attacks her in broad daylight. When someone calls the police, he takes off, only to abduct and murder 43-year-old Diane Ruse, a woman he had never met before. The whole spree ends not because of some big police manhunt, but with a simple phone call to his dad.
And this brutal timeline, it just raises this huge question. Why? To even begin to understand, we have to look at this central paradox of Wade Wilson's life. It's this stark contrast between the world he was given and the world he decided to create.
See, Wilson was adopted into a wealthy, loving family. He grew up in a beautiful home, had 2 sisters, and literally every opportunity you could ask for. But the choices he made, they tell a completely different story. In high school, he's already into drugs. He gets expelled for setting a fire in a school bathroom. By the time he's 18, he's already started a life of crime, and he basically treated his family not like people who loved him, but like an ATM.
Now, it's so important to understand that the murders in 2019, they didn't just come out of nowhere. They were the horrifying climax of a long, escalating pattern of violence, and it was almost always directed at women.
Just look at his history. Back in 2015, he was accused of kidnapping and assaulting a woman, but somehow the case got dropped. Then in February 2019, just a few months before the murders, he savagely attacks his girlfriend at the time, Callie Matthews, choking her, fracturing her foot. Soon after that, he starts dating Melissa Montanez, and not even 2 weeks in, 15 days, he's already violent with her too. This guy was a predator, hiding in plain sight, and the system just failed, again and again, to stop him.
So, after murdering 2 women and almost killing a third, Wilson is on the run. He breaks into some random house to hide out, and it's from there that he makes the one phone call that would seal his fate, a call to his biological father, Stephen.
The call started with this incredibly haunting admission. "I did something I can't take back," he tells his dad. "I'm a killer." Now, his father had gotten these kinds of desperate calls from him before, so he's thinking it's about drugs, maybe a fight. He had absolutely no idea what he was about to hear next. And then came the gruesome details. He described meeting Christine Melton, going back to her place, and then, with this chilling, calculated coldness, he said he waited for her to fall asleep. His exact words to his own father were, "And I choked that bitch." There was no remorse, no regret, just a cold, flat recounting of what he did.
But his confession then took an even more depraved turn. He described abducting Diane Ruiz, a total stranger, choking her, and then pushing her from the car. And to make sure she was dead, he ran her over, again and again. His words, filled with what sounded like a disturbing excitement, were that he kept going until she was spaghetti. He wasn't just confessing to his father, he was bragging.
Completely horrified, Wilson's dad puts the phone on speaker for his wife to hear, and as he kept his son talking, she quietly texted Wilson's location to the police. The very people he called, thinking they would help him, they were the ones who made sure he was caught.
Wilson's story doesn't end with his arrest. Actually, his behavior behind bars got even more bizarre, even more defiant. It really cemented his legacy as this remorseless monster.
Okay, this is just incredible. While he's in jail, this bizarre online following starts to build up around him, and these supporters, mostly women, started a fundraiser for him. They managed to raise over $11,000 for a confessed double murderer.
And his actions in jail, well, they were just a performance of pure defiance. He tried to escape, he got caught trafficking drugs, and then he made up this wild story that he was being framed by some high-trafficking company. He absolutely loved the attention from his female fans, his so-called TikTok wives, who were sending him letters and money. And then, in this final, shocking act of defiance right before his trial, he covered his face in offensive tattoos,
including swastikas, like he was putting on a permanent mask for the monster he is.
So during the trial, his defense team tried to argue that the crimes weren't premeditated. But that one word, premeditation, the act of planning, was everything. And the prosecution had the ultimate proof, Wilson's own words, him bragging to his father that he waited until she fell asleep. I mean, that's undeniable proof of his intent.
The verdict came down fast. The jury found Wade Wilson guilty on all counts. For the murders of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, he received 2 separate death sentences. And as he heard the verdict, he just smirked. A final act of defiance that absolutely horrified the victims' families who were sitting right there in the courtroom.
So, we're left with this really unsettling question, right? Wade Wilson wasn't a product of poverty or neglect. He was given love, wealth, opportunity, and yet he chose a path of pure, senseless destruction. This case forces us to confront a deeply disturbing thought. What if, sometimes, evil doesn't actually need a reason to exist?